Welcome to Coast Vue. I hope you had a great weekend. This is the show that celebrates the men and women who are so focused on making this place such a great place to live, work, and play. Today's show is one I've really been looking forward to. I look back in my time at the Sun Herald and the work that I did in the community, both before, especially after Katrina. And I had the opportunity to meet so many dedicated people, so many people who were doing so much heavy lifting on behalf of coastal Mississippi. You know, they're just big sacrifices. That's the way I would say it. And so it's had so many on this show. If I go to the list, actually, of those who have not been on the show yet, the list is getting shorter. That's the good news. The list is getting shorter. So as I work to create this sort of digital history book of coastal Mississippi, talking to the George Schlogels and the Roland Weeks and the John Hairstons and a long list of others, the Jerry St. Pays, gosh, that's important. But someone who is sort of in that same realm, who I've really not only was impressed with during the difficult moments, but someone who I saw led with a heart and led with a wonderful soul, who was a great connection to coastal Mississippi. And the interesting thing about this next guest is she came here to work in the gaming industry, I think in June of 2005. So you do your math. Katrina hits in August. So she got her welcoming committee was Katrina. I can't wait to hear more about that. Anyway, I want to invite my friend Karen Sock, who is now the president and CEO of Sock Enterprises. We'll talk more about what that is here in just a second. But Karen, how you doing, my friend?
It's great to see you. I'm doing wonderful. Thank you, Ricky.
It's good to see you too. So where are you sitting right now?
I'm sitting in the sunroom in my house.
Yes, nice and light, white.
Yes, it is.
I see is that an elephant behind you? What's that I'm looking at?
Yeah, that's an elephant, and he's painted on cloth. But as you may know, the elephant with the trunk going up is an old Irish folklore that brings good luck. So I used to collect a lot of elephants, but now I only have a few because many of them got blown away. But I just think having them around is a nice thing.
So listen, we have a connection. I worked for Advanced Condé Nast, and they owned the Cleveland newspaper and Cleveland.com as well. And you grew up in Cleveland. And it's going to be interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. When I was, I think, 12 or 13, we went to catechism. I was baptized Catholic and went to St. Wenceslas Middle School. And then in high school, I went to Hoban Dominican High School, all girls Catholic high school. The Dominican nuns taught us. They were really tough. They taught us, they educated us. They roller skated with us. They taught us how to change tires and change oil and how to run a business. I remember in the 9th grade that we even had a language lab. We all had computers and headsets way back then. So I had a wonderful foundation. And I graduated from Hoban Dominican. I was a class president, class vice president, very active. And then I went on to Cuyahoga Community College, which is a local college. I went there for 2 semesters, and then this guy from Wright State University came on campus and recruited some folks to go down there. So I went to Wright State with my 4 best friends, and we had been kept pretty close at home. And I had a ball. I went to every party and, and did all the things I should not do. And I was sent home on academic suspension. And my mother was furious. And she told me, you get a job, and I don't want to see you unless you're going to it or returning from it. And so I got a job in a hotel. And my first transfer was to Napa, California. Then I worked in San Francisco. Then I came to Chicago, where I met and married my husband and had my only kid. Then my husband got transferred to New Orleans, and I was able to transfer as well. I worked at the Crown Plaza, which was owned by Joe Cannizzaro. He's a big part of my professional development, and I live in his community here at Tradition. So along the way, there have been so many blessings and so many people that tapped me on the shoulder and supported me to have a really fabulous career.
Joe Cannizzaro from Biloxi. He's made so many contributions in New Orleans, and of course Traditions and St. Patrick's High School and all those wonderful campuses that are happening there. His vision is incredible, isn't it?
It really is unbelievable. If he says he's going to do something, you can count on it. And I remember after Katrina, when we had lost everything, like so many people here, I ran into Gerald Bussey, and he said, Joe Cannizzaro is developing a community. And I had just told my husband, we live on the back bay. When it rains, I can't even sleep because I'm afraid that we're going to have another situation and our belongings will be destroyed. So we came out here to look at the community. And so I told my husband, I'm going to put the house on the market. And he's like, okay, whatever, Karen. And so we put the house on the market. It sold in 7 days. So we had to rent a condo on the beach for a year while our home was being built here. And I haven't looked back. So when I came to the Gulf Coast, it was an exciting opportunity as Caesars Entertainment was expanding, and they bought the property in Gulfport and the property in Biloxi. And then 10 weeks later, it blew away. So it was really quite an experience. But, even through that, as I think back on it, and I lived in the Night Nonprofit Center, we pulled the office furniture out. We had cots in there. The office is in an 18-wheeler, half of it women showered in, the other half men showered in. We cooked food on hot plates and all those kinds of things. But as I think back, how many people were just totally devastated. Our staff members had to come for clothing. We had a clinical psychologist. We had a medical doctor giving tetanus shots and making sure that they were okay. And then for about 15 months, we kept a clinical psychologist on staff on property because a lot of times people would just have an emotional breakdown because there was so much on them. And even though this was a difficult time, I'm so grateful that I had a husband, I had a daughter, I had a job, I had resources, I had emotional support, and many people didn't have that. So even through that, it was okay.
If you go back, it's such an interesting time. By the way, the Sun Herald did the same thing. We had a psychologist who worked out of our offices for a good long time. Many months, and a medical doctor as well. We did the shots just as you discussed. But it was an evolution, and employees really needed that, and it was very accepted that this person was here, and that no one hid the fact that they would go in and talk to them. Everybody was having their own challenges in different kinds of ways. What I remember about Caesars during that time, of course, keep in mind for people who were not here during that time, we had the Grand Casino that was in Gulfport and Biloxi. Caesars Entertainment bought them. And I got to know many of the executives at Caesar during that transformation. In fact, after the storm, I took one of them over to Gulfport as Rick Carter was actually in the process of renovating after Rick and them had bought that facility, and he was so impressed with how it was turning out. But anyway, Harrah's owned where the Night Nonprofit Center is today, and through a lot of gyrations, ultimately Harrah's was able to help us with that building, turn it over to the community foundation, and a collaboration of others to create the Night Nonprofit Center. And but man, that was a really trying time, and your focus was on how do we get back opened again as soon as possible, and how do we keep as many employees still here as many as possible. And there was a lot to think about during those days, wasn't there, Karen?
Yeah, there were, and the company leadership was really focused on how many people can we relocate so that they can keep working. How many people can we bring back to work, and how do we make those decisions? And I remember at one point, as we brought people back to work, and the market was a little soft at first, and then it started to build back over time, but I had to lay some people off. And I remember calling my boss and saying, this is an awful thing, and I would like to give people an opportunity to choose if they want to step away. And my leadership team were smart young people, but none of them had ever laid anybody off before. So I had a series of meetings, and I said, look, this is the worst thing that as a leader I could ask you to do, but I need to leave. 70 people need to leave. And I was shocked. 75 people raised their hands and said, I will step away. I can work on my home. So-and-so has kids. I mean, the heart that went into the decisions that they made was unbelievable.
Yeah, what we'll do when we come back on the other side, we'll continue this conversation and tell how the aftermath of Katrina, especially for a casino executive, was a really trying time, but also a very inspiring time, as Karen was about to point out. This is Karen Sock. We'll continue on the other side. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Coast Vue. So many memories are conjured up as I'm having this conversation with Karen Sock, who I worked with in the community in so many different ways. And of course, when Katrina hit, she had tremendous responsibilities for Caesars here in coastal Mississippi. And we were just talking about this request that she made of her team, and people were raising their hand, knowing what that meant to raise their hand, that they would step back for some period of time. You said 75 raised their hand. Karen, that's, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. You learn a lot about character in those moments, don't you?
Absolutely. Character and heart and decency and humanity. You learn a lot. Yes, you do.
What I remember, it's interesting because the Knight Ridder owned the Sun Herald, and right after Hurricane Katrina, McClatchy came in to buy the Sun Herald. They heavily leveraged themselves to buy Knight Ridder. So I was very aware of the billions of dollars that it costs for McClatchy to buy Knight Ridder at a time when newspapers were already being challenged. I was always surprised by that. The rest of the story is McClatchy ultimately filed bankruptcy, sadly. But I remember also the Caesars in the aftermath of Katrina, they were also in a big significant move of buying things. I remember them having like $7 or $9 billion worth of debt. So this whole notion of the challenges we were having in coastal Mississippi playing out in the context of this larger organization, there was a lot to think about, wasn't there?
There was a lot to think about. There was a lot on the line, but I'm gonna tell you, those executives are smart up there. They have some very smart, strategic, financial folks under the helm. That's for sure.
So we're all engaged in the recovery effort. Does someone along the way, some regional vice president or someone say, Karen, we need you just to double down in every way that you can, be engaged in the community, work in the community, play a role in helping coastal Mississippi come back? Or is that just something that was just ingrained in you to do that?
Well, it's ingrained in me to do that. And I don't know how you could live here and see what was going on and not raise your hand to provide all that you can do. And as a leader, there's certain things that are just part of your DNA, is that you step up. And sometimes it's not comfortable. And but in leadership, there's a big responsibility that comes with that. It's easy to have the celebrations and hand out the bonus checks, but when it's tough, that is really determines what kind of leader you are, how you stand up and support others during the tough times.
And Karen, you look back at that moment, and this is one of the things that I feel so privileged to do with Coast Vue is to focus on those leaders that help us get to this moment, that we had the opportunity to work shoulder to shoulder with. We were just, we were surrounded by people who were just incredibly selfless. They were burning the midnight oil. I don't know when. I know I didn't sleep very much. I can tell you that.
Well, do you remember one person that was particularly outstanding to me with Anthony Topazi?
Yes.
He's no longer with us, but I remember going to that business meeting and he said, we need to come together as business leaders. We have money to recover. We need to work together to bring our community back to its feet. And he was a tremendous leader from a broad community standpoint. And I had the greatest admiration for what I saw him do.
Yeah, Anthony and I were close before the storm. We were joined at the hip after the storm, and he was I often referred to him as kind of a bull in the china shop because he wouldn't take no for an answer. That's and right. Frankly, his responsibility for the Governor's Commission was infrastructure. That was his responsibility. Mm-hmm. As the president of Mississippi Power, they had all their challenges they were dealing with. But then he was, through his infrastructure committee, he was developing a plan, literally, just as we were doing in tourism and others had their responsibilities on the governor's commission. He was building this plan that was going to enable Haley, who was spending so much time in Washington lobbying both Democrats and Republicans to get us the billions of dollars that we were going to need to rebuild coastal Mississippi. But Anthony's role in that was just so significant. And in fact, I've said this many times, I do plan to actually circle back with maybe John Hairston and George Schloegel and Jerry St. Pay and a couple of others and tell Anthony's story. Anthony's role in the aftermath of Katrina, because of the role he had as the chairman of the infrastructure committee, cannot be understated. Cannot be overstated how important that was. And he went on to he left Mississippi to be involved with Southern Company, and had significant responsibilities there, and then ultimately contracted Lou Gehrig's disease and ALS, and died of that. And we had the opportunity to go up and visit with him not long before that. Let me tell you something touching, Karen. So Anthony is breathing with the aid of a respirator. Of course, as Jeff Duncan and I have talked many times on this show, about Steve Gleason, because Jeff Duncan, who's on my show every Friday, he is writing the book about Steve Gleason. Mm-hmm. It ravages your body, but it doesn't take your mind away. And so we're sitting there. It was George Schloegel and I think John Hairston and two or three others of us were there with him at his house in Birmingham. And he got my attention, and he just wanted me to look at him. And he said he got someone to get a iPad in front of him, and he struggled to get the iPad to go to a certain number of pictures. And the picture that he wanted to show me was a picture of Haley Barbour and Anthony and me having a conversation about the recovery effort, and he just wanted me to see that, and it meant so much to him that isn't that interesting? That's what he wanted to show me.
It shows that his mind is going, and he can remember an important moment in time like that.
Yeah,
it's truly amazing. I remember I was on the executive committee with him of the Gulf Coast Business Council when he was the chairman, and after one of the meetings, I asked him, would he perform in the CEO Talent Show, which is a fundraiser for the United Way? And he said, yeah, I'll do it. And I knew that if Anthony would do it, that all the rest of the leaders across the coast would do it. And he was amazing. He dressed up as Marilyn Monroe. Somebody flew a dress in from LA. They had a professional makeup artist. People didn't know who he was. And he sang "Happy Birthday to You," and he sat on a desk, and he had a kid sitting there that was supposed to be the president. It was hilarious.
He really loved the outdoors. He loved to hunt, and it was kind of sad actually. In his house in Birmingham, he had an area where you could practice your golf swing, and he had a pool table and some things to watch TV. He had some of his deer heads from past hunts that were there. It was sad in that this vision for this play area that he wanted to have, but unfortunately with his ALS he couldn't go downstairs now. And right. It was just that was hard to see, but he left a wonderful legacy, and again, Absolutely. One day we're gonna focus on him. But we were surrounded with people like that were giving their heart and soul and energy and passion to bring coastal Mississippi back. And I think that when we talk about resiliency, which is something really well, the ability to bounce back, one of the things that makes coastal Mississippi so strong in that area is that we have seen it. We've been at the depths of despair. You can just say it the way it is. Mm-hmm. And we crawled our way back out of it. And what we learned about ourselves and our fellow neighbors, and what I learned about you during that process, it makes us have more confidence in the kind of leaders that exist here in coastal Mississippi. So if we're ever hit again, in some respects during the pandemic, I felt like we had a leg up on other communities because we knew what it's like to bounce back. Mm-hmm. It helped us make faster decisions. It helped us sort of embrace the moment, as tough as it may be, and move forward. But that's what we observed, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And we're tough cookies. I got to say that. It's a special group of people here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
So, Karen, you continue on in your gaming experience. So, continue the story of coming back after Katrina and sort of the rest of your gaming story.
So we came back. The decision was finally made to come back and to use the banquet space and turn it into a small casino. So that's what happened. And I think it was a week or two after we opened, and the Beau Rivage opened, and the IP Casino opened. So slowly but surely, the market started to come back. However, it was a slow comeback. So the gaming industry employed all these people, which was fabulous for the Gulf Coast. And even during Katrina, during the recovery process, all of the gaming companies paid their employees through the end of the year and kept their health care intact, which was unbelievable. But all the companies did that, and then slowly, the business came back. And I just remember you had Luann Pappas on just before we got here. Well, Luann came to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. My boss, who was at the time, was John Payne.
Hey, let's do this. Let's. I don't want to have to cut you off. We're at the end of this segment. When we come back on the other side, we'll talk about Karen's connection to John Payne and Luann Pappas on the other side. We'll see after this.
Okay.
Welcome back to Coast Vue. I have my friend Karen Sock. We've worked in the community. I guess since the day you landed here in June of 2005, not long before Hurricane Katrina, which is why Katrina is such a big part of this conversation. Mm-hmm. But when we went to break, you were mentioning John Payne. You can explain to people who John is, and then Luann Pappas, who had a 30-year career at Harrah's before moving over to the Scarlet Pearl. But you can pick it up from there.
Okay, so it was after Hurricane Katrina. We had just opened. The market was building slow, so our business was building slow. John Payne came to me at the time. He was the regional president, division president. So he had a big job. He was based in New Orleans, and he came down to see me. He said, "Karen, you could use some marketing support." And I said, "I definitely could." So he said, "Well, Luann Pappas is available, and I'd like you to have a conversation with her. Do you know her?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I know Luann. We had met her at many conferences, and she was well known across the company as a dynamic and strong marketer." So Luann comes down to visit, and we had a conversation. And I said, "You think you want to do it?" She said, "I don't know about Mississippi, Karen. I just don't know." So I convinced her to join us as a consultant, as a marketing consultant. And she did that for maybe maybe somewhere between 3 and 6 months. And then I offered her the VP of marketing job, and she took it. And John was right. She was the strongest analytical marketer in the company. And she knew the marketing vehicles in and out. And we would sit down together and make decisions about how. And so when I left, when she got there, the property was struggling. When I left the property in July of 2008, we were number 3 in the market behind Beau Rivage and the IP. So that'll give you some idea about our journey. It was really, really something. And I'm really proud of the team and what we accomplished. And Luann was a major contributor to that. And that's why that's where she is today.
She went on to be the regional vice president of marketing. Yes. And when I left the Sun Herald, went to Mobile for a couple of years, same company, and joined the team in New Orleans as president of NOLA Media Group. I had known Luann here, but then began crossing paths with her over in New Orleans. So, it's a small world, though, isn't it, Karen?
It's a small world. Listen, it's a small world, and you better be nice in it, because you never know when you're going to circle around and run into those same people.
Buddy, I say that all the time. The people who burn bridges, and of course, being a publisher, and you've seen people like this in your career. People will burn the bridge, and they will regret it. And usually, I don't hold grudges. You know what I'm saying? I move forward, because I do believe what goes around comes around. It is a very, very small world. You never know when you're going to connect with someone. There's actually a great lesson for the young people who are listening, or maybe some of the older people who are listening who haven't learned this lesson yet. Treat people with dignity and respect, and it will come back in spades. You just never know how a relationship will come back again, do you?
Right.
So anyway, so your tenure at Harrah's went on for how long, and then where did you go after that?
Well, after I left Harrah's in 2008, I had set up Sock Enterprises Inc. I knew that I was going to leave at some point, and I think that the whole Hurricane Katrina scenario had pretty much taken its toll, and so I said, let me do some consulting. And so I started a consulting company, and I did a lot of work in the nonprofit sector. And then Tom Brosey called me and he said, I need you to do some consulting with me for Margaritaville, a casino on the Back Bay, a small casino. And I said, okay. So we went to Margaritaville corporate offices and I said, this looks like an exciting opportunity. I'd like to be an investor and to be a part of your team. So we did that and we had a great opening, but we were undercapitalized. And that was a big issue, that we didn't have enough money to grow the casino in size and scope as quickly as we needed to. And we took a non-traditional marketing position in a very competitive market. So when you're a little guy and you don't have enough money to compete against the big guys, that's not a smart decision. So to make a long story short, that didn't work out.
Well, what I remember, Karen, what I remember for people who don't know this history, what I remember is that even the Gaming Commission made an adjustment in their normal selection criteria, their normal approval process around, they typically wanted to have a casino open with some commensurate investment in hotel space, a number of hotel rooms, et cetera. In the case of Margaritaville, they made an exception thinking that the Jimmy Buffett, piece of that would give it the legs it needed. But as it turned out, certainly that was important for sure. But as it turned out, not having a commensurate investment in hotel turned out to be a really significant issue.
Yeah, it did. It did. That was the bottom line. So at the end of the day, it came down to our marketing strategy and lack of capital, and so the property did not make it over the long term.
But you had Karen Sock, Sock Enterprises that you had formed, and when I read about your company, it was you do strategic and business planning, leadership and staff development, board development, project management, keynote speaking, fundraising, diversity, equity, inclusion workshops. You really have covered the spectrum, but that's turned out to be a pretty good gig for you, hasn't it?
It really has given me a lot of flexibility, and again, I'm so grateful for my career in the gaming and hospitality industry, because everything I used as a leader, I could use in my company today. So I'm a one-person shop. I do a lot of work in the nonprofit sector. But the thing that I'm most passionate about is my program, Pathways to Possibilities. And I think you know about that. Back in 2011, the Jackson County Chamber of Commerce, they had their education committee went to visit a program over in Alabama, Mobile, called Worlds of Opportunity, and it was developed by Southwest Alabama Workforce Development Council. And it was a career expo that focused on the trades. So Diane Payne, who was the executive director of Jackson County Civic Action, had hired Paige Roberts to do some consulting work for her, and she also hired me to do some consulting work for her. And the two of us, she had a meeting with us and said, I would like for you all to develop something similar to Worlds of Opportunity. So Paige and I put our heads together. Paige had been an educator and obviously a celebrity on WLOX, and I was a casino president. So between us, we knew every person up and down the Mississippi Gulf Coast. So we had a meeting at on the 15th floor at the Great Southern Club. And we called together the leaders of the community and laid out what we planned to do, and they gave us their support. So we did our first Pathways to Possibilities hands-on career expo with all the business and industry committed to support us at the Mississippi Gulf Coast Convention Center in 2013. 6,000 eighth graders came to the event, and we've had one ever since then. This will be our 10th year. In 2019, as you know, Paige had just gotten her master's degree, so she's now the president and CEO of the Jackson County Chamber, and I'm so proud of her. That's her big opportunity, and she's invested a lot of time in both industry and in her education, and I thought it was a wonderful opportunity for her. We continue to be great friends, and we talk pretty often, and I've continued. So after we did the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and Paige and I went to North Mississippi and did a project with the Create Foundation, and they continue to work with their students in the 8th and 10th grades. And then from there, we were called to do some work in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So we lifted up a P2B in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. They're still doing that. Then I did Central Mississippi, which is Jackson. It's the 3rd year there. I'm going back for the 3rd year at Covington, Tennessee. So they're doing a project there. I just launched the first one in Memphis, Tennessee, and I'm going back to the Mississippi Delta next week. I leave on Sunday for the 5th annual P2P Mississippi Delta. We'll have 2,500 eighth graders from 13 counties. So since 2013, we've hosted 115,000 eighth graders across the state of Mississippi. We have a study, a longitudinal study with the University of Mississippi Center for Research Evaluation. That's Dr. Sarah Mason and her team. They do a great job for us, but it's showing that it's meaningful. Dr. John McKee at Digestive Health, he comes to P2P, a medical doctor. 2 days he invests there. And he told me this last year, Karen, I'm starting to have students call me and say, I'm preparing to go to medical school. Which are the best schools in Mississippi to go to? Can I get fellowships? How do I avoid being in a lot of debt when I finish? So, when you see these things come full circle, I went to the IT pathway, and a young man, he kind of looked like a brown-skinned Harry Potter tall kid. He said, Miss Karen, I came to P2P in the 8th grade. Now he's working in IT at Memorial Hospital. That's what I'm talking about. That's what makes me excited,
Well, God, there's a lot to unwrap there, but right off the bat, Paige Roberts is a good friend of Coast Vue, a good friend of mine. Her work in the community is incredible. You think about the work that Tish Williams and Adele and Paige and others are doing.
Yes.
That chamber work is so much more about building value in the community. It's about community building now, and grant writing, and being partners with the mayor and the city council and all these different aspects. It's great, but what it is the sum total of all these experiences they've had. Because Adele, having been at the Knight Foundation and Habitat for Humanity, and you had Paige had been at Red Cross and WLOX, which obviously gave her great connections, and went on to complete her education, and now with the chamber. But it's just the accumulation of this. Tish, who had foundation experience before she came to Bay St. Louis, and how she leveraged that experience after Hurricane Katrina, just amazing, just so amazing.
Really
hey, we're going to continue our conversation with Karen Sock on the other side. We'll see you after this. Karen Sock. I don't know anyone who hears that name who doesn't smile and doesn't see a person who has tremendous care for the community, a great big heart, a passion for what she does. I mean, I probably worked with you in the chamber, the business council, United Way. I mean, all the things that everybody did at some point along the way, you and I crossed paths and all of those. But we were chatting a little bit about the collaboration that you and Paige did, and how exciting it is to see this connection with young people and unlocking their potential, and how that's spread across America in some respects. Your company's involved in a lot of other stuff as well. But before we go much further, you heard what I said about Adele and Tish and Paige and this accumulation of knowledge and all of that.
Yes.
That's kind of the story of coastal Mississippi, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is. It is the story of coastal Mississippi. And going back as far as George Slogel having a dream of being the head of the bank and then the mayor of the city. So just think about all those people that are so in love with their community, and they planted a seed, they had a vision, and then they worked toward achieving those outcomes. And they have. And
I look at, you look at the mayors across coastal Mississippi, Billy Hughes, and how he's a successful businessman, time in the legislature, Fofo Gillich, and the work that he did. I mean, he didn't have to be mayor. You think about the mayor of Pascagoula and the work that he did as a dentist, and then later in advising in dentistry across America. Billy Knight, one of my favorite mayors on the coast, Billy Knight. Here he is in his 80s, and there's no stopping this guy. All of them, none of them had to be mayor. They didn't, they define their role as mayor today as just something that they want to do to give back to the community. We're blessed in that way.
And, you said something that's very important. You said in his 80s, we have to do a better job. We talk about ageism. We make assumptions about people no matter their age. So when I think of ageism, I don't only think of older people. I just turned 70, but I'm 35 in my mind, and I try to live like I'm 35 years old, enjoying every moment of every day. Sometimes bad things happen to good people, but the way that we take those experiences and process them and decide, I'm going to keep living. My dad was married to my mom for 68 years. His parents signed for him to marry when he was 19.
Yeah.
The last 2 years of her life, she was out of the hospital. She was in the hospital so much that he was pretty much on his own. Then when she passed away, this is the first time in his life that he can do what he wants to do. And you know what? He's having a great time, and I'm happy for that.
And what's remarkable about your story is that you yourself had a bout with breast cancer along the way.
Yes.
And
Mhm. In
and
2010, I had early breast cancer and I had a lumpectomy. They cut it all out, and I had 33 radiation treatments. And I thought, okay, this is over with. Let me keep going. I never talked about it. I didn't think about it unless I had to go to a treatment. Well, then 5 years later, it comes back. It metastasizes to my bones. And so it really devoured, a solid tumor devoured the number 6 vertebrae in my neck. And there's no cure for that. So I go to Memorial Hospital. Dr. Allison Wall is my doctor. I take a small tablet, and then every 3 months I get a shot of Exgeva to protect my bones, and I take calcium and vitamin D, and I keep going. Now I know so every day that the eyes open, this is what I say: every day that the eyes open, it's a good day. So you could get hit by a car and you can mope or you can do. So I'm very fortunate, because if I didn't tell you, you wouldn't know that something is wrong. So come March, it'll be 8 years that I have lived with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. There is no cure, but I have a wonderful treatment plan that's been very effective. And I am truly grateful for every moment of every day. I got a wonderful husband, a beautiful, smart daughter, and I'm grateful.
You know who you remind me of telling that story? Everybody's got their own story, and you never know what people are going through. But my dear friend Lucy Marion Roberts,
yes,
and her view toward life, man, she was a special woman, wasn't she?
She was, and I only met her once, and that was when she received an award from the United Way. But I know Dorothy very well, her daughter, and she's an amazing woman. Again, talk about vision and her experience and what she did with it. Her sister Robin, her sister, I mean, their entire family, they're like rock stars. So, yes.
You're you really define resilience. You literally define resilience. Hearing you tell your story and what you go through to be able to live and appreciate life and make your contributions, you define resilience, and you feel that, don't you?
Absolutely, I do. I feel so fortunate to be able to live with grace and show people, not in loud words, but in the way that I live, that it's not over till it's over.
Woo! What a beautiful way to end this show. Listen, Karen, oh man, I've really enjoyed visiting with you, and
I've enjoyed it too, Ricky.
For the people on the show who you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or SuperTalk TV, you know that Karen has a beautiful smile. But I think for those who are listening on the radio or through podcasts, you can see it emanating just through her voice, and it's great to get reconnected again. And it's been a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.
Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.
All righty. Thank you.